In this video, something a bit special. It's a Peugeot 504 TI Automatique, a car that's more advanced than you expect, far more robust than you might expect, and represents a car that is kindly largely forgotten in the UK, and wrongly so. Peugeot 504 was launched in 1968 and sort of replaced the earlier 404, one of which we've already driven on the channel, but production actually ended up overlapping quite considerably. But these cars sold over 3.7 million units just in Europe and were built everywhere else as well. China, Nigeria, South America, even Australia, oddly built by Renault in Australia. They built the 504s as well. And the mechanical package, quite advanced. We've got independent rear suspension, we've got fuel injection, which for the time, absolutely remarkable. And though this one dates from 1978, fuel injection already existed on the 404, so it was carried over. It's a car with lots of competition history as well. It did especially well in some of the toughest rallies on earth, things like the East African Safari. And yeah, definitely a lot more than you might expect from a fairly humdrum look. But talking of the looks, the styling was initially by Pininfarina, but I think it's more fair to regard it as a collaboration. Peugeot with Pininfarina and Citroën with Bertone, their own styling teams would compete against the Italian styling houses, and the end result would be a bit of a mishmash of both. So I think there's a lot of detail work, things like the headlamps perhaps, and these beautiful side light indicator units were probably done by Peugeot's own designers. And if we look at the back, while this distinctive sloping tail was part of the initial Pininfarina design, I'm not sure these beautiful dainty rear lights were. Absolutely lovely. So just to confirm, TI for the fuel injection, Automatique for the transmission. And we'll talk about the transmission in a bit. Even that is quite interesting. But I think we'll start under the bonnet. So under the bonnet, I think engine wise, still quite similar to the earlier 404. Oh, I see. There we go. Now we're locked in. So the engine is canted over, which helps keep the bonnet line down, and the sump kind of sits awkwardly underneath. But the big news here is this Kugelfischer mechanical fuel injection. So mechanical fuel injection was more common on diesels. Petrol cars went to an electronic a bit earlier on. But these systems also used on the Peugeot 404 and I think some Mercedes and BMW models as well. But for what's seen as a humdrum family car, that might not necessarily be what you expect to find under here. It's a 2-litre engine. It produces about 97 brake horsepower and has lots and lots of delicious torque. It's tuned much more for relaxation than sport, I think. But yeah, nice clear engine bay, lots of access to everything. The radiator is slightly offset as well over to the driver's side. And everything just feels very, very solid in a way you just don't associate with a modern Peugeot. Moving inside, everything just has a really solid, robust feel to it. And I think it's quite a classy dashboard in here. I like the vents. You can pull this up to redirect the airflow. That's quite, I've never seen anything quite like that before. Lovely brass. Is that a little ashtray? It is an ashtray. Quite a long ashtray. Some mostly unfathomable heater controls. A little cigarette lighter. A more modern stereo unit. And then we've got the automatic transmission. Buttons for the electric windows. You know, it's quite a well equipped car for 1978, I think. We've got indicators right on this flappy little chaos stalk over here. The lights a bit more advanced. Apparently that's side lights, that's dip beam, and then back again for main beam. All a little confusing. Wiper control by twisting like so. We've also got a little hazard light switch. Oh, that's lovely. That sounds almost like clockwork. And a button for the heated rear window. Otherwise, not a lot else going on in here apart from these comfortable seats. And you'll note how the head restraint comes out of the seat. So if you decide you don't want the neck protection, you can go for that. There's a manual sliding sunshine roof as well. So you just pull it back and forth. I used to own a Mercedes 123 that had a very similar roof, and it yeah, it just feels so much easier. Why would you bother with all the electrics when you can just do that? Really nice and simple. And I liken it to the W123 in a great many other ways. That was another car that was also insanely robust. When they developed the estate of this platform, it had 4 coil springs on its live axle. They didn't use independent rear suspension on the estates. So very long, 3 rows of seats. They're amazing cars as well. But I think while there's a bit of interest around the estates, especially as they were so common as diesels, I remember riding in one as a taxi as a child, this petrol automatic should be very, very pleasant to drive. But before we do, I'll just have a sit in the rear. Clambering aboard. Oh gosh. This is like climbing into the back of a Citroën DS. You'll note plenty of space for the knees alert. This enormous centre armrest. And yeah, this feels very comfortable indeed. I seem to have plenty of headroom in the back, and it feels like a very nice place to sit. Lovely view forward. So yeah, when it comes to the Citroën DS, Peugeot were a closer rival than you might imagine. We're just taking a look at the fuel cap, because even that seems to be a beautifully engineered work of art. Look at that little Peugeot emblem there. Beautiful. But really, I was going to come and look at the boot. Oh gosh. Yeah, fair bit of space there. Now, there was briefly a time where they offered the 504L, which was a saloon with the live axle from the estate. But they had to change all the floor, so there was less space for rear passengers and less space in the boot because of that. I'm not sure why they went to that much trouble for the cheaper version. But hey, I guess some people just find independent rear suspension a bit too advanced. Like the buyers of my Australian Ford Fairmont AU, which also still has a live axle. But lovely mechanism here to hold the boot up. Come and look. A little coiled spring just to keep a bit of tension on and keep it up there. And then you bring it down and close it. What a lovely noise. Right, start her up. Feeling quite pressured here. 99,378 miles on the clock, but sadly we're not going to be seeing that clock over today. I say clock over, Peugeot had such faith. It's actually got the extra digit, so it will just go to 100,000, which Ford, even in the 80s, were still not doing that. Telling. There we go, the engine fires up really smoothly, quickly settles down to an idle. I have no idea where the screen wash is. Is it push? It is push. There we go. So mild soakage, but we got a good overlap, no triangle of doom. Oh, and we got program wash wipe as well, so I don't actually have to turn the wipers on. You actually rotate the stalk to go through the wiper settings, also a bit like a W123 Mercedes. But of course we've got a big corner left here because they retained the left-hand drive pattern for right-hand drive, just as Citroën did with the GSA. But nonetheless, it's not a bad performance, I don't think. But we'll drop the gear lever into 3. It has no D position, and we'll let the car creep away of its own accord. So straight away we're feeling the benefit of the suspension. It's very long travel and very soft. So the ride quality is not very far from the legendary Citroën DS. But of course, so much more mechanically simple. Apparently Peugeot even made their own dampers for these cars in an effort to get the ride control just how they wanted it. If we quickly return to the gearbox, another point of interest, this is the ZF 3 HP 12, or it may be a 22 in this later one, but it certainly started off with a 12, and that was actually ZF's first automatic transmission. The first car it was available in was the 504. They are very proud of this fact. If you go to the ZF website, they've got a piece dedicated to the Peugeot 504, and I think that's just lovely. Now let's watch out for all this traffic. Ease her away. Keeping the window and sunroof open for ventilation, much needed. But what strikes you is we're doing 2,000 revs and it's all so effortless. It really is very, very relaxing indeed. Now we shall go this way. Lovely part of the world we're in here. It just sort of gathers pace with the absolute minimum of fuss. So as much fun as that Fiat 131 Mirafiori we drove recently was, and it really was, if you just want to get about in comfort and serenity, apparently this is what you need. It's just remarkable. The ride quality is so good. The steering's slightly vague. It is a steering box, I believe, in these, but even so, there's no play in the wheel, and it's very easy to direct it where you want to go. As well as the saloons and estates, Peugeot also built the pickup. The pickup was actually launched in 1979, and European production of the saloons stopped in 1983. The pickups famously continued well into the 90s and were still sold here in the UK into the 90s as well. Also very popular in Argentina. But production finally stopped at the 504 in Nigeria in, I think it was 2006. That's a remarkable production life. And the fact the car was so popular in Africa tells you a lot about how robust these cars are. Just a world away from the slightly flimsy Peugeots of the 1990s, I think. Much as I love 90s Peugeots, don't get me wrong. But national speed limit, so we'll try a kick down. Ooh. So when provoked, she will get merrily down the road. Oh, I need to use the window switch. I was going for the window winder. No, we're more advanced than that. I can close my window with electric power. Marvellous. Let's try going this way next. We have no idea where we're going. It's all a magical mystery tour. Well, we're trying to avoid going on the dual carriageway, because I don't think that's going to be the most fun. So it does roll a bit when cornering, but you can't exactly describe it as wallowy. That's the price you pay for all that supreme comfort, I guess. But yeah, this is just lovely. I've never driven a 504, and it's lovely to finally get the opportunity. We saw this car at Festival of the Unexceptional back in 2021, and it was just like, oh, I have to meet that car. So I'm very glad to have finally managed it. Very grateful to the owner for letting us drive it. Now, an interesting fact also is that when the 504 came out, you could not get a Citroën DS with an automatic transmission. Eventually the Borg-Warner transmission was fitted, but it did take a fair while for that to happen. I've tried to avoid the dual carriageway. We're driving alongside it. I haven't entirely succeeded. But yeah, this is definitely a car that feels built for those long French roads, the highways, the autoroutes. But even the route nationales, I think would be very pleasant to encounter in such a vehicle. Being only a 3-speed, perhaps it sometimes feels like it's in slightly the wrong gear, but oh, this is so smooth. The changes are imperceptibly smooth. That's mighty impressive work by ZF there. Incidentally, 504s sold and built in Australia apparently were more likely to have a Borg-Warner gearbox, and presumably because of the local build requirements. And Borg-Warner did have an Australian arm which turned into BTR and built the transmission for my Ford Fairmont. So the links just keep coming, folks. Or maybe I'm just obsessed with my Fairmont. But yeah, the brakes feel really good. It's just a lovely place to sit. This is a magnificent car. And I feel bad that not more of these cars were saved. This is a very rare survivor in the UK. In fact, it's probably more likely that more coupes and cabriolets survive. They were available with a PRV V6 engine. And I don't think that they ever fitted that to the saloon, sadly. Although weirdly, I think there was a Group B pickup built on the 504 platform. Very, very strange. But yeah, it's just a shame that people go mad for the Renault 16, the Citroën DS, when arguably the pick of the lot might actually be the humble Peugeot 504. Oh, what a beautiful car. It's a lot more joyous and a lot more comfortable than I think I probably expected. I knew the 504 had a reputation for toughness, but I'm not sure I knew it had one for comfort. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hub store if you wish to support what we do. But otherwise, we shall see you in a future video. Farewell.